Good evening, cult members, and welcome to the Pop Culture Cult's new show that we don't have a name for yet. I'm Sean, and this is Josh.
Hi, everybody.
He's from Epoch VR. We've actually talked about him in the past. The two of us have been friends for 7, 8 years.
What year is it?
5 minutes.
Somewhere in there. 42.
I weaseled my way into his wedding. It's totally what
Fair
happened.
enough.
It's
Yeah,
totally what
seems
happened.
about what it was.
We've been talking Star Wars together for almost our entire
Probably
friendship.
about the entire time we've known each other.
Yeah, and we came out of retirement in our other hobby to help him and his lady run our local group. They stepped down, we stepped away, we took a break, and then we all decided, we should do the Star Wars show. And
Yeah. I mean, realistically, it's one of those things that, we've kind of been passionate about, sitting around chairs at parties where we all tend to congregate and just start going off on our tangents while our wives roll their eyes. So
there's a lot of that happens.
It does. It's
Our
true.
wives like Star Wars, but they're not super nerds like we are.
No.
They call us fanboys.
My wife's called me obsessed before. I'll be frank. It's happened.
My wife just like, dear, yes, dear, dear, yes, dear. If you've watched other episodes from the Pop Culture Cult. So we're working on a Star Wars-based show. We have a couple of names that we like. We are right now talking about the Quorum of the Wills, which seems appropriate but not very searchable. We're also talking about Fulcrum Reports, also relevant. However, it's not really something that would be easily searchable. So, your first two quests is, one, subscribe to this channel, hit the button so it changes colors, and hit the bell so you get notifications. And then two, give us a name. Leave us a comment with a name that actually makes sense.
I'm still a big fan of the Snoke and Poke. That's just me. It sounds like a bad Outer Rim drive-through.
With really good barbecue that ends up being bad later on. No.
Toss you an arm and a leg.
What's the name of the we're Reference Theater? What's the name of the restaurant at the end of the universe in
Milliways?
Something like that.
I think it's Milliways, if I remember right. God, it's been a while since I actually read that.
Anyways, so let's get into it. We're going to do a little bit of an introduction for ourselves. For those who have not either watched Pop Culture Cult or watched Epoch VR, and maybe give you a little bit more reference of our Star Wars knowledge, thought process. We are not Force Center, know every character and the seventh layer character in every movie, and have read every single book, and are all. We do our best to know all that stuff, but there's just so much in the universe that it's really hard for us to keep up on all of that.
And I mean, realistically, there are professional, news organizations out there that are actually devoted to Star Wars. This is what they eat, they breathe, they sleep. Coming from our perspective, I think it falls kind of this line where we were old enough to grow up with the originals, and then we had to suffer kind of through that. Well, I don't want to say suffer because it was really good for the expanded universe.
Which was bad at times.
And, yeah, exactly, it was. It was good, and then there was bad. So, then we hit like 99, and the prequels start coming out.
Right.
So we're of the old generation who's able to actually appreciate the new generation.
Yes.
And at the same point in time, able to kind of wag our finger at it and go, you could have done better there.
You could have done better there. And so our first question that we're going to answer, and I'll ask you first, why do you love Star Wars enough to start a stupid little show?
Yeah, that's almost a question my wife would ask sometimes. So, realistically, I grew up with Star Wars, and you'll hear that a lot from people, but in my family, it's genuinely true. It's kind of a tradition in ours.
Right.
When I was a kid, my dad took me to see Empire in the theater because I wasn't born when A New Hope came out. And from then, it became a family tradition. My brother's in the 501st. My dad's still an obsessive fan. Most of my friends are either in the 501st or the Mando Mercs.
Right.
So it's just become kind of this thing. And as a parent, it's become a bonding thing between me and my son, and even my wife, who does enjoy the trilogy and the prequels and some of the subsequent programming. it's always been that hero's journey. Growing up, it was a form of sci-fi that was dark. It was tangible.
Right.
It borrowed from things like Arthurian legend. It borrowed from kind of the dark religious tones.
Right.
That were really big in the 80s.
And then added in, like, Buck Rogers' A Dumb Adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it did bring in some of that slapstick, swashbuckling into it, but
Right.
at that core level, there was a very, very deeply seated mythology.
Right.
That, to this day when I play video games, that's something that draws me in.
Right.
I wanted to be that hero on the screen. We got the old really poorly constructed lightsabers, we fought out front and everything else.
Not the Christmas wrapper.
No, we
never
actually
did that. Oh,
no,
I
we actually
destroyed thousands of those things doing lightsabers.
Oh yeah, my dad got really upset when we started using the shop vac tubes.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad.
Because they make the noise when you swing.
They do. So when they brought out the original Kenner lightsaber, she's like, here you go beat each other senseless in the driveway, and we did, and we beat the sense out of some of the other kids in the neighborhood. So that was the era we grew up in, and it's been that continuing passion since.
Right.
It's the whoopee I could always kind of go back to
Right.
when sci-fi failed me, and there's always been something new.
Right.
For good or bad.
Even with the expanded universe, we still got new stuff, and now we got the new canon. Mm-hmm. We're getting a lot of new stuff. For me, I didn't quite understand my love of Star Wars and my appreciation for Star Wars until I was much older as an adult. I had Star Wars as a kid. We did the Star Wars stuff. I had few of the Kenner toys, but not a lot. The prequels I watched and I liked. That'll be a reoccurring theme with me, is I do appreciate and like the prequels. Are they as good as they should be? No. But it wasn't until later in life where I started actually sitting down and thinking about the levels that you were talking about and the hero's journey and stuff like that. I really like the storytelling process that is making of something. And you're building a universe. That's why I like Marvel so much. That's why I like Doctor Who so much. That's why I like Harry Potter. You're building universes.
Absolutely.
And so when you have this thing that was built by one man and then expanded on, I love that concept. Now, I really got into this after Disney bought it. After Disney came in and bought Star Wars, because I felt like going in and trying to do the expanded universe and doing all of Legends and figuring out what was good, and some of it didn't count and some of it did, and all that stuff was very daunting. But when Disney came in and Kathleen Kennedy said, if it's not a movie, Clone Wars, and something else, it's not canon. It's not new canon, and everything from here on out is all connected. Once I knew that, and I was like, oh, okay, now I'm in. I want to read all the books, and I want to read the comics, and I want to watch Rebels, and I want to watch Clone Wars, and I want to do this, and I want to do that, and so I really got even more sucked in. And now that I'm here, I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of really cool stuff here, and it's ever expanding. And the other part for me too is the idea that we can speculate and have fun and make up our own headcanon and make up our own stories. Much of what the expanded universe was people doing that.
It's true.
And so that's why I love talking about Star Wars, is because we can sit down and go, well, what about this? And what about this? And we're going to do a lot of that here with the Mandalorian here. We're going to talk about that for a minute. My very first memory of Star Wars was I was born in and I would say 82, 83. I was like 7 or 8. There was this show that popped on, this movie popped on, and I caught the first little bit, and they're in the snow, and there's these giant robotic dogs attacking this village in the snow, and then lasers started happening.
Yep.
And I was like, what am I watching?
The best one. Just kidding.
We will have that discussion at some point in time. But the Battle of Hoth and Empire Strikes Back was my first real memory of Star Wars, and then it was built on from there. And so, what was your first memory?
Man, there's about two that probably go hand in hand. One of which was actually seeing Empire in the theater, and I was little. I think I had to be maybe 5 at the time. But there's enough of a impact there that I do remember being in the theater, with my grandfather and my father watching this. But growing up, it was Christmas. And I always thought growing up that my father was the one who had kind of fueled the Star Wars beast. And while my dad was a huge fan, most of the toys I got for Christmas came by way of these packages from my grandfather. And, my grandfather passed away when I was 8, but he always believed in the nurturing of the mind. And he believed that Star Wars held this really good foundation. So that's one of my most cherished memories of it, and that's probably one of my earliest, was getting the figures so I could go simulate, all the battles out in the backyard.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I mean,
I had the same
hooked.
thing with G.I. Joes. Not the Kenner Star Wars toys, but the G.I. Joes.
A lot of those, too. Sometimes they crossed universes in the backyard. But yeah.
So was there a toy that you didn't get when you were a kid?
Death Star playset. Hands down. I mean,
the big the big monster
it was
5-foot round
huge.
one. Yeah.
It was so huge, and I think I think looking back, I had almost every other one. I had TIE fighters, my X-wings, slews of figures, and everything else, but I always wanted that Death Star. And I think that's probably when I got more into Legos.
Yeah.
So I could actually sit there and reconstruct it to the best
Legos.
of my ability. So, and it's funny, as you get older and the licensing starts happening, is you start going and you look at Lego sets and you're like, I did that first.
Yeah.
Thanks. Where's my kickback?
But there was also 7 different colors in that Star because nobody had enough gray pieces for the Death Star.
No. The Star Wars set the space set was still blue.
Blue, yeah. Spaceship. The one I always wanted when I was a kid was the big Millennium Falcon. I have a Han Solo tattoo. Han is not necessarily my only guy, but he is my guy. Han and Captain Mal from Serenity Firefly universe are my two, those are the guys I identify most with. That's not who I wanted to be. I always wanted to be Luke. But the Millennium Falcon, the big one, the big the same size as the Death Star kind of size.
Yeah.
I always wanted that one. I never got it, but I did see one in an antique shop about a year ago, and I had it in my hand, and it still worked. He had the buttons, and all the buttons and everything worked, and they had the satellite dish and everything on it. And I had it in my hand, and I'm looking at it, and it was $200. And I'm looking at my wife, and she's like, "Where are you gonna put it?" I'm like, "I'll figure out someplace." She's like, "No, you're not spending $200 on a toy, but it's really cool, and I've wanted one since I was a little kid." So, although I didn't get it, it is a toy that I wanted as an adult. I also want Luke. I call it the Skywalker lightsaber. It's the one that Anakin had that Obi-Wan gave to Luke. And Luke lost his hand, and then Rey got it in Force Awakens, and then now it's in multiple pieces at Lucasfilm. That's the one I've always wanted. That's the lightsaber I've always been drawn to. Is there a toy as an adult you want if you don't already have it?
I don't already have it. As I got older, the toy collection had to kind of go away a little bit, and the funny part, actually, I should say, is it evolved into the prop collection.
I've seen some of your props.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of sabers. I'm not gonna lie. As an adult, I actually want more helmets.
Yeah,
as far as it goes. I also want a really good, high quality blaster, Stormtrooper blaster.
Yeah.
I don't think, even in the Force Effects line or anything, they've brought out the baton now, but they haven't actually brought out a really good. If they have, let me know.
Yeah. Leave it in the comments.
Because I was always Luke was great, but I was always kind of into the Empire.
Yeah. See, I was never will be an Empire guy, especially after some of the new canon stuff where they go back and they start filling in some of the holes, and you're like, oh my God, these guys were assholes.
They really were.
And then you get the First Order, who's even more assholes. The Empire would even go you guys are too extreme. Yeah. But there was a DL-44 blaster, the ones that Kenner did for Return of the Jedi.
Yes.
There was one at Collector's Marketplace, and in the case with the box, and I was like, I have a display case, and I would really like to have this, and it was like we were getting ready to go on some trip, and so like we were on like money shutdown, and it wasn't like it was like $40-$50. It wasn't like unrealistic kind of thing. That one is like one of the ones I was like, but I go to every garage sale, every flea market, every time I stop, I walk around and look for Star Wars toys and signs and stuff, and so it's all stuff. We'll get more and more into what we like and what we don't like about Star Wars as we go along, but one of the things that we found and are talking before we got into the show is that we like to talk about what's going on currently and what's coming in the future of Star Wars. We got the notification that we are getting a Disney streaming service, and we thought for a very long time that we were going to get a live action Star Wars show. And then it was announced, I have a lightsaber going off right now, speaking of lightsabers. It was announced that Jon Favreau, because I can't say his name the right way, was going to do a live action show for the Disney streaming service, which was a huge, like, oh my God, you got somebody at his level wanting to come in. By the way, he said he's been writing this for like 20 years.
Yeah.
He's been working on this. And it came out finally that he is doing The Mandalorian.
Yep.
Now, the quote from John was, after the stories of Jango and Boba Fett, another warrior emerges from the Star Wars universe, the Mandalorian, set after the fall of the Empire and before the emergence of the First Order. We follow the travails of a lone gunman in the outer reaches of the galaxy, far from the authority of the New Republic. Okay, so let's now discuss what's going to happen in this show.
Here we go.
First off, we know that Pedro Pascal is, well, he's all but signed the paperwork to be the Mandalorian. He's been on, there's been some pictures where it looks like it's probably him on set. Gina Carano has kind of maybe been on set. There's some really far away photos.
Yeah, it's kind of sketchy.
It's from makingstarwars.net. They've been really on top of all the information there.
Yep.
They have some photos. It looks like her. And we're getting Carl Weathers, Apollo Creed, which is so awesome. I'm hoping that he's kind of a Lando kind of character, whatever. But where do you think this story is? I won't say where. What do you think this story is going to be about? Is it about the underworld? Is it about him just being a lone gunman? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think, when you look at how they've kind of retconned everything, but at the same point in time, they're bringing in those elements from past projects.
The good stuff.
Absolutely the good stuff.
Still no rabbits.
Yeah. Thank God. But yeah, they're starting to get into this. So, and I think it's really fitting that for the network, the Disney Network subscriber service, that they're doing The Mandalorian, and at the same time they're doing Cassian Andor, which we'll talk about, because those two types of shows are going to be able to get into elements of the Star Wars universe that I think the fans, including myself, were clamoring for, and one of which was with the fall of the Star Wars video game 1313.
Right.
Because it was completely designed to be sub-Coruscant, spy, smuggling type of a genre.
Right.
So with Cassian Andor, we're going to be able to get that. I'm almost certain we're going to see it.
Right,
absolutely. Yeah. And with the Mandalorian, we're probably going to see very, very heavily into kind of that seedy outer rim. So I think there's going to be some elements. Obviously, things like the outfit have been borrowed a little bit from the concept art. But I think we're also going to get a little more into some of the criminal organizations, largely because Han Solo's story starts setting it up.
Right.
You still have Zizor and the Black Sun hanging out there somewhere. So I think the two of them are really being filmed in a lot of ways to kind of start building that connectivity. And, to sound like almost every other fan out there, look at the time period of The Mandalorian. I'm almost 100% certain with a huge margin of error, by the way. I've been proven wrong before on this. Hopes and dreams.
It's a strong 20%.
It's a strong. Maybe we'll fill it around 30. I think we're going to see Sabine Wren.
Yes.
I think we're going to see Ahsoka, and I think Dave Filoni's involvement and them leaving Rebels where they left it.
Right.
I think they're saving some big guns, knowing Filoni. But I also see that some of that history may appear in Cassian Andor that lays kind of the building blocks, because Andor is going to take place roughly around the time of Rebels, maybe just a hair after, depending on how far back they go. So I think we're going to get to see a little bit of a past and future play with what we already know.
Right. The thing about Filoni's doing the first 2 episodes. So it's Jon Favreau's show. It's his story. He's the showrunner and stuff like that. But he brought in all these directors to do individual episodes. He has Filoni doing the first 2 episodes. He's also got Rick Fukuhama from Dope, Deborah Chow, who did Jessica Jones, Bryce Dallas Howard, Taika Waititi. So he's bringing in this deep core of directors to tell a deep story, is what I think it is.
Agreed.
I agree that the idea of how they left Rebels and knowing that it's kind of still that lawless time after the Battle of Endor.
Yep.
The New Republic is there, but they're not really established yet, and they're trying to maybe put some stuff together. It gives people like a lone gunman or a bounty hunter or a smuggler, it gives them more opportunities to do more stuff.
Yep.
They've touched on these subjects in other places outside of live action movies and TV shows and stuff like that. They talked about the Outer Rim in the Thrawn book and the Thrawn Alliance's book. They talk about the Outer Reaches. They've talked about the Outer Reaches in the Chuck Wendig Aftermath series, where the First Order leaves and goes to the Outer Reaches and stuff. They also, Galaxy's Edge, the actual part of Galaxy's Edge is in Thrawn Alliances, the actual spaceport and stuff, and I cannot remember the name of it right now. It's right there. Anyways, the cantina that's going to be in Galaxy's Edge in that book, it's in the Outer Reaches. It's also something that's been touched on. So having this idea of being able to bring those aspects from Rebels, from Return of the Jedi, and stuff that's been set up in the books for fanboys like us, who can sit there and say, oh yeah, I know who they're talking about here. That person was in Aftermath, or that person was in what's the Most Wanted. That's the Han Solo one with Kira and all them and stuff like that. And Last Shot deals with a lot of that stuff that happens between Battle of Endor and the first of Force Awakens. So having that connectivity, I think, is really important for me. However, can they get away with doing a story about a protagonist who is gray as your first story in a live-action TV show?
I think they have to. For anybody who goes out there and reads through the stories online and watches other YouTube channels, we know that there's this huge clamoring for gray characters, gray Jedi. There was all of us who were, go gray, Ahsoka, and, and that thing. But, again, that kind of goes back to the lore we grew up with, where a lot of us who grew up with Star Wars really started understanding that dichotomy of, the Force as itself, without getting into too much of the mythology. We all know that the Force was designed to be a balance. It was designed to be gray, and that the Jedi and the Sith just became extremists. So we've seen with the character development on Mandalore, with Night's Watch, with Sabine, and everybody else, we've seen that they do kind of fly into this lawful neutral kind of a category. And Pedro Pascal, if he truly is the Mandalorian, is going to be great, because he did kind of portray that in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So
The Red Viper?
Yep.
Red Viper, yeah.
Yep. So I think for him, I think it's a good casting if it is him, and I also do believe that I think we're ready. I think Disney, and mind you, I'm a huge Disney fan, but I think, and we'll talk about this probably in the future, but I think one of their fail points that they did was they got a little too heavy into the comedy, and I think the fans revolted a little bit because it took kind of that dark mythos away. So you're bringing Cassian Andor, who's kind of a tragic character in the end, but you're rooting for him, and a Mandalorian character. So you're bringing two characters who distinctly play in that gray realm, and I think the fans are clamoring for it.
You kind of get it a little bit with Rey in The Last Jedi. If you really pay attention in that movie, her outfit gets grayer and grayer and grayer as she learns more and more about the Force.
Message.
There's a message in there somewhere, and even Luke talks about there's no more. This is I'm not the Last Jedi, but he talks about being that she leans into the dark side a lot more. That was something that Qui-Gon did. That was something that Mace Windu they both leaned into playing with the dark side of the Force, and so they've laid the groundwork in other places. I just find it I'm a lightsaber guy. I want sword fighting. I want that stuff. I want Benioff and Weiss to do Battle of Bastards with lightsabers. That's all I've been wanting. However, having this show and the Cassian show both, do we get any? We get references to the Force. We'll get probably references to the Wills at least a little bit, but do we get lightsabers? If Ahsoka's in it, we're getting lightsabers.
Whether we want it or not.
Whether we want it or not. And we might see the Darksaber with Sabine. But do we need the lightsabers and the light and dark of the Force to make this show good? Or do we get just the criminal underworld, which is what they've been kind of setting up?
I don't think we can really get the criminal underworld without tapping into how the Force plays. It's such a underlying groundwork. That being stated, we know from past stories and everything else how big the universe is. And I think let's just go this way. When you have games like Old Republic and everything, and you're picking classes, there's people who want to be smugglers. There's people who want to do that. We want to know what their world's like. Why did Han Solo have such an issue with Kanji Club? Things like that. How are those dynamics? So
tell it the Kanji Club.
Tell it the Kanji Club.
That was the first time.
Side note, I forgot where the kid who was the head of that was from. It looked vaguely familiar.
The Raid.
That was it.
The two guys from the Raid were Kanji Club and his part.
Eating at me for a while. I think we'll probably see a lot more criminal underworld. Rogue One, not Rogue One. I apologize. Star Wars or Solo. Star Wars story. Too many S names. Solo set it up. They started bringing in the criminal underworld, and if we go back to Rebels with Maul, they're bringing the crime syndicates into it because there cannot only be Fets. So they're bringing more into it. Right. So I think it's going to get pretty heavily, but we're going to have, if you follow like a TV production, you'll go 5 episodes in that's just devoted to that storyline, and then you get that hook that ties it into everything else. So
they've said that this series is going to be 10 episodes. They're spending $10 million on each episode, so they're spending $100 million on a 10 episode, on a 10-hour movie is pretty much what they're doing.
Yep.
And it's probably going to be one of the first things that they set up when they release Disney Plus, which is what they're calling the streaming service. When they release that, this will be one of those things that they are going to be the draw.
Yep.
Come see the first live-action Star Wars TV series.
Yep.
Give us, $12.99 or whatever it ends up being, or
sold.
Whatever. I've been saying from jump that I was buying the Disney streaming service because of this show, but also the Cassian Andor thing. That's where we can get all the Star Wars. They're bringing back Clone Wars, which we haven't even at some point in time when I actually finish all of Clone Wars, we can have the talk of Clone Wars. I'm about 3/4 of the way through season 4, season 3, season 4. I have to look. Okay. I watch it I listen to it while I'm driving around in my work truck. We'll put it that way. because I can, have Netflix on my phone. But the Clone Wars, the Cassian show, the Mandalorian. Is there going to be this is kind of on the same topic of Mandalorian. Do you think we're going to get a young Leia, a young Solo, a young Luke? Do we get the story of Luke as a TV series between A New Hope, or not, from Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi, where he actually goes and gets his kyber crystal and makes his lightsaber? There's that deleted scene. Mm-hmm. Do you want to see that, or you want them to expand out and tell more stories outside of the original trilogy time period?
I think for fan service, you have to give those odes. Let's face it, we want them. Those are those jump up in the theater moments.
Right. Chewie, we're home.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, yes, and at the same time, a big resounding no. I think Disney's really trying to make a push with the production to start shifting away from the Skywalker, saga.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they're going to have to start bringing other characters in it. So I think because of Cassian's role in the Resistance and the Rebellion and things of that nature, we'll probably at least get Leia references. More than likely, it wouldn't shock me that since Jimmy Smits is still alive, we'll see Bail Organa.
Yeah.
Almost certain we probably will at some point. He's been sneaking in and out of the movies. So I don't know if we're going to get him directly, but we might.
With Cassian's show, there's one character with Leia. There's one scenario that makes sense to me. She's still, at that point in time in the timeline, she's 17, 18, 19, depending on where they do the whole. She's 19 at New Hope.
Right.
Millie Bobby Brown is 16 right now. She looks like young Carrie Fisher. You could probably get away with having her come in and do, she's there with Jimmy Smits, and they are doing something with Cassian, and she's kind of standing there in the background, or have her in her, she's the one relaying the messages, that kind of thing. So it's like the diplomatic, what do they call it? The diplomatic mission. So that kind of thought would be kind of cool. I just want Millie Bobby Brown in it, however we can get it. But
yeah, so it's funny you bring that up, because I actually got an online debate. Shame on me. But no, it was actually a discussion. Somebody posted the picture of Millie Bobby Brown and had said, wow, she really looks like a young Carrie Fisher right at that age. And, there had been people who chimed in saying, well, I'd really like Billie Lourd, Carrie Fisher's actual daughter. Billie Lourd does not look like her mom.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And she's already in the universe.
And she's already in the universe as another character. Exactly. So Millie Bobby Brown looks the part, and I do agree. I don't think Cassian starts out as a much darker version of Han Solo.
Right.
I don't think he starts out that way. I think something happened either in his life or in relation with the rebellion at that time, to push him into kind of that spiral. Right. So I do agree with you. I think in that capacity we would probably see Leia, because at that time period she's a huge part of the Senate. She's heavily involved. She's probably going to see that.
The Leia, Princess of Alderaan book is directly about her in the young Senate, in the junior Senate, and kind of figuring out what Bail Organa and her and mom are doing. I can't remember Bail's wife's name.
I never remember it.
It's in the book a bunch, but anyways, that's when she starts to figure out that they're doing stuff with the rebellion, and at the end of the book, spoilers, they bring her in like you don't already know. But but I just feel like it's a little fan service to have a lot of the references and stuff, but there's a certain level of fan service that you have to do. They're already doing it with The Mandalorian. They've showed Boba Fett's gun from the animated Christmas special, which I thought was really interesting. The ice cream maker that was in the Cloud City. Actually, it's a data port. Empire Strikes Back, the guy running by. One of my favorite things from Celebration last year was watching the live stream, and they were on stage, and 100 guys dressed up as the guy with the ice cream machine ran through the set while they were filming something, and they're Andy and Anthony are like, what is going on?
Look of shock,
did somebody
dread,
tell us what was going on here? So I like the idea what they're going to do with the Mandalorian. It's hard not to just call it the Mandalore.
I know. I'm saying Mandalore for years now. So.
Right. Or Mando. But I would really be excited if they don't have him be a direct Mandalorian. Have him be somebody who stole the armor.
But then we get into Boba Fett.
And then, but they already referenced Jango and Boba Fett.
Right.
So they have that. I would like to. I would think that would be kind of an interesting point because that's how they deal with the Boba Fett armor and the Aftermath series. Is there's a sheriff on Tatooine who finds it and ends up using it to bring peace to this area and stuff like that. So I like that kind of general thought process and idea. But I also like that he's a direct descendant of somebody, or he's related to Sabine, or that kind of thing. I
think it'll happen. I mean, we can, conjecture for hours on the evolution of the character. For one, I'm actually hoping he is legitimate Mandalorian, because after the end of Rebels, you didn't see him. You didn't see him through the original trilogy, and now they've got this episode taking place after the original trilogy.
Right.
So there's got to be some dynamic. What the hell's been happening with Mandalore?
What happened? I wouldn't be surprised if they come out and they kind of just say, okay, they were Switzerland. They were done with the whole everything that happened. You guys just do your thing over there, and we'll just be over here for a while.
And it wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah, there was kind of a reference to Mandalorian armor in Solo. There was the trophy in the room, so that was kind of interesting. That's our thoughts, I guess, on Mandalorian and what they're going to do on the streaming service, and some more speculating. One of the things at Force Center, which is one of the shows that I listened to that kind of got me in the mode of doing this, one of the things they say is speculate responsibly. Mm-hmm. We will be doing a lot of that. That was a lot of what that discussion is. So what do you guys think of that? What do you think that what the Mandalorian could be and what it should be? There's two different things in there. So we're going to end with one little thing, just a little bit more of the let you know kind of where our thought process is as fans and stuff like that. We have the new 3 movies. Mm-hmm. Which one is your favorite?
Okay, growing up, it's always been Empire. Not because Empire had
not overall favorite movie, just of the first four of the new four
of the new four
of the new four. So Force Awakens, Rogue One, Last Jedi, Solo. Of those 4 of the new
those
ones,
4, Rogue One, hands down, hands down.
We're supposed to be a little contrarian around here.
Honestly, I like the darker aspect of Star Wars. I liked Empire Strikes Back because it was an interstellar World War II movie.
Right.
And Rogue One took that to a whole new depressing level. Now, not to say that's where some of us are really drawn to it in the Star Wars universe, but we've been served some slapstick for a while now. The legitimate realities of this struggle that they had came to life in that.
Right.
And it was powerful. That wasn't to discount Solo. Solo was a good romp. Casting Donald Glover as Lando was perfect. But that's got to be my favorite of them so far.
That's my favorite. It's the most down to earth movie within all of them. It reminds me very much of Rebels. Imagine that. It's the same time period, but it's a much more personable story.
Right.
It's about Jyn Erso, and it's about her dealing with everything, and her father, what he did, her surrogate father, what he did, all of that, but still making the hard decisions and making the right decisions. I love that. The best scene in Star Wars movie history is in that movie. When that hallway goes dark, I screamed out in the theater, "Be him! Be him! Be him!" And I'm like hitting my wife, "Be him!" She's like, "Stop hitting me!" And then the red lightsaber comes on. And that's the first time in movie form on screen that we get to see who Vader really is.
Yep.
If you read Lords of the Sith, you get a lot more of what he's the power that he has, but also the struggle that he has. Yep. I love Vader, but I also feel that he is perfectly used in Rogue One, which is why I love it so much. Little segments, the big scary that you don't know about in the corner is much more scarier than if you know his backstory.
Yep.
I love the prequels, but I also understand why people don't like it because we don't need the backstory of Vader.
Yeah.
We don't need that. But Rogue One it's so well done. I don't care if there was problems and they had to reshoot the last act. They got it right. And that's I hate this argument that they had to go back and reshoot half of Han Solo. I don't care. Spend $500 million. Make it right. Of the four, Rogue One's my favorite. I really like Solo. I like Solo as a standalone, not really connected to anything else, and yet super connected to everything else.
Absolutely super connected to everything else.
And it can stand solo by itself, but what I really wanted out of Solo though is what they did, what they set up, and what they move forward with. So if they go with the Crimson Dawn, and we were actually talking about this today. If they had done Solo, if Solo had come out in July or October and not May after The Last Jedi, had some time to breathe, wasn't forced down our throats, wasn't actually given, and it was actually given good advertising, which Disney kind of screwed them on that. I think that is a way better movie than everybody else gives it credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, knowing, to a degree before we get into this movie, and they borrowed some stuff again from the expanded universe, that whole arc actually with Enfys Nest was impressive.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm pretty good about predicting where a Star Wars movie is going to go at this point. Didn't see that one coming.
No.
And it really does lay that foundation for things that we may potentially see in the Cassian Andor series. So it really was well done. I walked out of it going, I think the reshoots were worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to Ron Howard for pulling that together. Still not sure about Kessel and the whole run there, but it makes sense. But moreover, the dynamic that they had between Lando and Solo and everything else.
And Kira.
Kira especially. She's going to be the character that I'm probably the most curious to see.
Yeah.
Like, we know where Han goes. We know where Lando goes. It's just filler at that point. But her, there's that darker connection to the Clone Wars, to Rebels. It's in there.
Yeah.
I want to know more.
Yeah, I do too. So that is our yet-to-be-unnamed Star Wars show. That's not the name. We're just going to go with that as the name right now. Like I said, give us a name in the comments. What do you guys think of this, our inaugural, that's the word, episode of our Star Wars thing? We will be trying to do this we're going to film Tuesday nights and upload on Wednesdays. We are going to do our best to bring you discussion most of the time, whatever news is important and stuff like that, and then we'll do things like we'll sit down and do a review of a movie or something like that. You need to get caught up in Resistance. I know. I'm too behind, but Resistance has been really good. That's a whole different discussion for another time. But that is what our show is like. Subscribe to the channel. Where can people find you?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, the channel's defunct now.
Well,
let me put it this way. It's actually, if you go to Facebook, you can look at Epoch VR. We have gone into a little bit of a holding pattern right now because VR is going through some interesting changes. It's going to be heavily brought back to life when the new Oculus Rift system comes out, because that's the one we're all waiting for. Right. It's not connected to anything. I can walk down to my friend's house wearing it, should I choose to. So it's going to come up. So Epoch VR on Facebook currently. There is no website. And every now and then I do upload some new information.
You can find us here at the Pop Culture Cult. We are on all of the social media stuff. It's all in the description. That is our show this week. Until next time, may the Force be with you always.